All right, I'm going to try another chapter of this. I put this book off for like at least a month. I was pissed at it. We'll see if this one makes it. Chapter 9. My own pseudo conclusion that we've been damned by giants sound asleep or by great scientific principles and abstractions that cannot realize themselves. That little harlots have visited their caprices upon us, that clowns with buckets of water from which they pretend to cast thousands of good-sized fishes have anathemized us for laughing disrespectfully. Because, as with all clowns, underlying buffoonery is the desire to be taken seriously, that pale ignorances presiding over microscopes by which they cannot distinguish flesh from Gnostic or fish's spawn or frog spawn, have visited upon us their own solemnities. We've been damned by corpses and skeletons and mummies which twitch and totter with pseudo-life derived from conveniences. Or there is only hypnosis, or there is only hypnosis. The accursed are those who admit they're the accursed. If we be more nearly real, we are reasons arraigned before a jury of dream phantasms. Of all meteorites in museums, very few were seen to fall. It is considered sufficient grounds for admission if specimens can't be accounted for in any way other than that they fell from the sky, as if in the haze of uncertainty that surrounds all things, or that is the essence of everything, or in the merging away of everything into something else, there could be anything that could be accounted for in only one way. The scientist and the theologian reason that if something can be accounted for in only one way, it is accounted for in that way. Or logic would be logical if the conditions that it imposes, but of course does not insist upon, could anywhere be found in quasi existence. In our acceptance, logic, science, art, religion are, in our existence, premonitions of a coming awakening, like dawning awareness of surroundings in the mind of a dreamer. Any old chunk of metal that measures up to the standard of true meteoric material is admitted by the museums. It may seem incredible that modern curators still have this delusion, but we suspect that the date on one's morning newspaper hasn't much to do with one's modernity all day long. In reading Fletcher's catalog, for instance, we learned that some of the best known meteorites were found in draining a field, found in making a road, turned up by the plow, occurs a dozen times. Someone fishing in Lake Okeechobee brought up an object in his fishing net. No meteorite had ever been seen to fall near it. The U.S. National Museum accepts it. If we have accepted only one of the data of untrue meteoric material, if we have accepted only one of the data of untrue meteoric material, one instance of carbonaceous matter, if it be too difficult to utter the word coal, we see that in this inclusion exclusion, as in every other means of forming an opinion, false inclusion and false exclusion have been practiced by curators of museums. There is something of ultrapathos, of cosmic sadness, in this universal search for a standard in belief that one has been revealed by either inspiration or analysis than the dogged clinging to a poor sham of a thing long after its insufficiency has been shown, or renewed hope, and search for the special that can be true, or for something local that could also be universal. It's as if true meteoric material were a rock of ages to some scientific men. They cling, but clingers cannot hold out welcoming arms. The only seemingly conclusive utterance or seemingly substantial thing to cling to is a product of dishonesty, ignorance, or fatigue. All sciences go back and back until they're worn out with the process or until mechanical reaction occurs. Then they move forward, as it were. Then they become dogmatic and take for bases positions that were only points of exhaustion. So chemistry divided and subdivided down to atoms. Then, in the essential insecurity of all quasi constructions, it built up a system which, to anyone so obsessed by his own hypnosis that he is exempt to the chemist's hypnosis, is perceptibly enough an intellectual enema built upon infinitesimal debilities. In Science, NS 31298 E.D. Hovey of American Museum of Natural History asserts or confesses that often have objects of materials such as fossiliferous limestone and slag been sent to him. He says that these things have been accompanied by assurances that they have been seen to fall on lawns or on roads in front of houses. They are all excluded. They are not of true meteoric material. They were on the ground in the first place. It is only by coincidence that lightning has struck, or that a real meteorite which was unfindable has struck near objects of slag and limestone. Mr. Hovey says that the list might be extended indefinitely, that's a tantalizing suggestion of some very interesting stuff. He says, but it is not worthwhile. I'd like to know what strange, damned, excommunicated things have been sent to museums by persons who have felt convinced that they had seen what they might have seen strongly enough to risk ridicule, to make up bundles, to express offices, and write letters. I accept that over the door of every museum into which such things enter is written, "Abandon hope." If a Mr. Simmons mentions one instance of coal or of slag or cinders said to have fallen from the sky, we are not, except by association with the carbonaceous meteorites, strong in our impression that coal sometimes falls to this earth from coal-burning superconstructions up somewhere. In Compass Rendez 91-197, Mr. Dobry tells the same story. Our acceptance then is that other curators could tell this same story. Then the phantomosity of our impression substantiates proportionally to its multiplicity. Mr. Debris says that often have strange damn things been sent to the French museums, accompanied by assurances that they had been seen to fall from the sky. Especially to our interest, he mentions coal and slag, excluded, buried unnamed and undated in science's potter's field. I do not say that the data of the damned should have the same rights as the data of the saved. That would be justice. That would be of the positive absolute, and though the ideal of a violation of the very essence of quasi-existence, wherein only to have the appearance of being is to express a preponderance of force on the way or another, or equilibrium, or inconsistency, or injustice. Our acceptance is that the passing away of exclusionism is a phenomenon of the 20th century, that gods of the 20th century will sustain our notions, be they ever so unwashed and frowsy. But in our own expressions we are limited by the oneness of quasiness to the very same methods by which orthodoxy established and maintained its now sleek, suave preposterousness. At any rate, though we are inspired by an especial subtle essence or imponderable, I think, that pervades the 20th century, we have not the superstition that we are offering anything as a positive fact. Rather often we have not the delusion that we're any less superstitious and credulous than any logician, savage, curator, or rustic. An orthodox demonstration in terms of which we shall have some heresies is that If things found in coal could have got there only by falling there, they fell there. So, in the Manchester Literature and Philosophical Association MEMS 2 9 306, it is argued that certain roundish stones that have been found in coal are fossil aerolites, that they have fallen from the sky ages ago when the coal was soft because the coal had closed around them, showing no sign of entrance. That in a lump of coal from a mine in Scotland an iron instrument had been found. The interest attaching to this singular relic arises from the fact of its having been found in the heart of a piece of coal, 7 feet under the surface. If we accept that this object of iron was of workmanship beyond the means and skill of the primitive men who may have lived in Scotland when coal was forming there, the instrument was considered to be modern. That our expression has more of realness or higher approximation to realness than has the attempt to explain that is made in the proceedings. That in modern times someone may have bored for coal and that his drill may have broken off in the coal it had penetrated. Why he should have abandoned such easily accessible coal, I don't know. The important point is that there was no sign of boring, that this instrument was in a lump of coal that had closed around it so that its presence was not suspected until the lump of coal was broken. No mention can I find of this damned thing in any other publication. Of course, there is an alternative here. The thing may not have fallen from the sky. If in coal-forming times in Scotland there were indigenous to this earth no men capable of making such an iron instrument, it may have been left behind by visitors from other worlds. In an extraordinary approximation to fairness and justice, which is permitted to us because we are quite as desirous to make acceptable that nothing can be proved as we are to sustain our own expressions, we note in the Notes and Queries 11-1-408, there is an account of an ancient copper seal about the size of a penny found in chalk at a depth of from 5 to 6 feet near Brandonstone, England. The design upon it is said to be of a monk kneeling before a virgin and child. A legend upon the margin is said to be Saint Jordanus Monachii Spalding. I don't know about that. It looks very undesirable to us. There's a wretch of an ultra-frowsy thing in the Scientific American 7-298, which we condemn ourselves if somewhere, because of the oneness of allness, the damned must also be the damning. It's a newspaper story that about the 1st of June, 1851, a powerful blast near Dorchester, Mass., cast out from a bed of solid rock a bell-shaped vessel of an unknown metal, floral designs inlaid with silver, art of some cunning workman. The opinion of the editor of the Scientific American is that the thing had been made by Tubal Cain, who was the first inhabitant of Dorchester, though I fear that this is a little arbitrary. I am not supposed to fly rapidly at every scientific opinion. A block of metal found in coal in Austria, 1885, is now in the Salzburg Museum. This time we have another expression. Usually our intermediatists attack upon provisional positivism is science in its attempted positivism. Science in its attempted positivism takes something such as true meteoric material as a standard of judgment, but carbonaceous matter, except for its relative infrequency, is just as veritable a standard of judgment. Carbonaceous matter merges away into such a variety of organic substances that all standards are reduced to indistinguishability. If, then, there is no real standard against us, there is no real resistance to our own acceptances. Now, our intermediatism is science takes true meteoric material as a standard of admission. But now we have an instance that quite as truly makes true meteoric material a standard of exclusion, or then a thing that denies itself is no real resistance to our own acceptances. This depending upon whether we have a datum of something of true meteoric material that orthodoxy can never accept fell from the sky. We're a little involved here. Our own acceptance is upon a carved geometric thing that, if found in a very old deposit, antedates human life, except perhaps very primitive human life, as an indigenous product of this earth. But we're quite as much interested in the dilemma it made for the faithful. It is of true meteoric material in La Astronomie 1887-114, it is said that, though so geometric its phenomena so characteristic of meteorites excluded the idea that it was the work of man. As to the deposit territory coal. Territory, no. Tertiary? As to the deposit, tertiary coal. Composition, iron, carbon, and a small quantity of nickel. It has been pitted. It has the pitted surface that is supposed to be the faithful to be characteristic of meteorites. Hold on. It has the pitted surface that is supposed by the faithful to be characteristic of meteorites. For a full account of this subject, see Compass Rendus 10372. The scientists who examined it could reach no agreement. They bifurcated, then a compromise was suggested, but the compromise is a product of disregard. That it was of true meteoric material and had not been shaped by man. That is, that it was not of true meteoric material, but telluric iron that had been shaped by man. That it was true meteoric material that had fallen from the sky but had been shaped by man after its fall. The data, one or more of which must be disregarded by each of these three explanations, are true meteoric material and surface markings of meteorites, geometric form, presence in an ancient deposit, material as hard as steel, absence upon this earth, in tertiary times of men who could work in material as hard as steel. It is said that, though of true meteoric material, this object is virtually a steel object. St. Augustine, with his orthodoxy, was never in, well, very much worse difficulties than are the faithful here. By due disregard of datum or so, our own acceptance that it was a steel object that had fallen from the sky to this earth in tertiary times is not forced upon one. We offer ours as the only synthetic expression. For instance, in Science Gossip 1887-58, it is described as a meteorite. In this account, there is nothing alarming to the pious because, though everything else is told, its geometric form is not mentioned. It's a cube. There is a deep incision all around it. Of its faces, two that are opposite are rounded. Though I accept that our own expression can only rather approximate to truth by the wideness of its inclusions and because it seems of four attempts to represent the only complete synthesis and can be nullified or greatly modified by data that we too have somewhere disregarded. The only means of nullification that I can think of would be the demonstration that this object is a mass of iron pyrites, which sometimes forms geometrically, but the analysis mentions not a trace of sulfur. Of course, our weakness or impositiveness lies in that by anyone to whom it would be agreeable to find sulfur in this thing, sulfur would be found in it. By our own intermediatism, there is some sulfur in everything, or sulfur is only a localization or emphasis of something that, unemphasized, is in all things. So there have or haven't been found upon this earth things that fell from the sky or that were left behind by extra mundane visitors to this earth. A yarn in the London Times, June 22nd, 1844. that some workmen quarrying rocks close to the Tweed, about a quarter of a mile below Rutherford Mills, discovered a gold thread embedded in the stone at a depth of 8 feet. That a piece of the gold thread had been sent to the office of Kelso Chronicle. Pretty little thing, not at all frowsy, rather damnable. That Hiram DeWitt of Springfield, Mass., returning from California, had brought with him a piece of auriferous quartz about the size of a man's fist. It was accidentally dropped, split open, nail in it. There was a cut iron nail, size of a sixpenny nail, slightly corroded. It was entirely straight and had a perfect head. Or California, ages ago, when auriferous quartz was forming. Super carpenter, millions of miles or so up in the air, drops a nail. To one not an intermediate, it would seem incredible that this datum, not only of the damned, but of the lowest of the damned, or of the journalistic cast of the accursed, could merge away with something else damned only by disregard, and backed by what is called highest scientific authority. That a nail, a communication of Sir David Brewster, Rep. 1845-51, that a nail had been found in a block of stone in Kingoody Quarry, North Britain. The block in which the nail was found was 9 inches thick, but as to what part of the quarry it had come from, there is no evidence, except that it could not have been from the surface. The quarry had been worked about 20 years. It consisted of alternate layers of hard stone and a substance called till. The point of the nail, quite eaten with rust, projected into some till upon the surface of the block of stone. The rest of the nail lay upon the surface of the stone to within an inch of the head. That inch of it was embedded in the stone. Although its cast is high, this is a thing profoundly of the damned, sort of a Brahmins as regarded by a Baptist. Its case was stated fairly. Brewster related all circumstances available to him. But there was no discussion at the meeting of the British Association. No explanation was offered. Nevertheless, the thing can be nullified. But the nullification that we find is as much against orthodoxy in one respect as it is against our own expression that inclusion in quartz or sandstone indicates antiquity, or there would have to be a revision of prevailing dogmas upon quartz and sandstone and age indicated by them if the opposing data should be accepted. Of course, it may be contended by both the orthodox and us heretics that the opposition is only a yarn from a newspaper. By an odd combination, we find our two lost souls. We find our two lost souls that have tried to emerge chucked back to perdition by one below. That according to the Carson appeal, there had been found in a mine quartz crystals that could have been, that have had only 15 years which to form. That where a mill had been built, sandstone had been found when the mill was torn down that had hardened in 12 years. That in this sandstone was a piece of wood with a nail in it. That at the meeting of the British Association 1853, Sir David Brewster had announced that he had to bring before the meeting an object of so incredible a nature that nothing short of the strongest evidence was necessary to render the statement at all probable. A crystal lens had been found in the treasure house of Nineveh. In many of the temples and treasure houses of old civilizations upon this earth have been preserved things that have fallen from the sky, or meteorites. Again, we have a Brahmin. This thing is buried alive in the heart of propriety. It is in the British Museum. Carpenter, in the microscopic and its revelations, gives 2 drawings of it. Carpenter argues that it is impossible to accept that optical lenses had ever been made by the ancients. It never occurred to him, someone a million miles or so up in the air, Looking through his telescope, lens drops out. This does not appeal to Carpenter. He says that this object must have been an ornament. According to Brewster, it was not an ornament, but a true optical lens. In that case, in ruins of an old civilization upon this earth has been found an accursed thing that was, acceptably, not a product of any old civilization indigenous to this earth.